Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon T-bar tank, and I'm coming in here to do a water change on it, and I noticed something down here in the bottom. It looked a little unusual. It looked all shiny and odd, and it is. What it is a hatchetfish, and it's perfectly alive and healthy. It's just sitting upright on the bottom, and what that indicates to me is that that's a hatchetfish with a bad swim bladder, and there's really nothing I can do for it at this point. At least I don't think there is. Just hope it gets better. I was out fishing the other day, and I saw a bass that was sitting on the bottom like this, and I kind of paddled around it in my kayak, and I looked at it for a little while, and I was clearly keeping it swimming. It was trying to get away from me, and after several minutes, it finally just gave up and just fell to the bottom and just sat on the bottom. I think I was wearing it out, so I left it alone because I didn't want to exhaust it. But I think something similar is going on here. I think it's a swim bladder issue where this hatchetfish is just going to live the rest of its life kind of sitting on the bottom like that, and unfortunately the rest of its life's probably not going to be too terribly long. So the other thing I wanted to point out about this tank is the way the T-bar is just building the sand and gravel and everything up on this end. It's really been working on it a lot. It used to do it down the other end, and it's switched, and I'm just kind of wondering why. If it's just a change of scenery, just got bored of the old neighborhood, decided it would move to this end of the tank. Maybe something changed with the interactions between some of the other fish or something. Not really sure. I do have this high-fin spotted pleco, as it was sold as. I'm not really sure exactly what species it is, but that spends a lot of time at this end of the tank. In fact, you can see how much time it spends at this end of the tank and how lack of water flow I've got at this end of the tank due to all of this thick, dense vegetation. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about, is while I'm in here doing a water change, I'm going to trim back some of this Java fern. I might trim back some of this anubias. This anubias is getting really thick and out of control, but I just noticed on this one I'm getting new flower spikes. I've got two more right there, and it looks like I've got another one coming up in there, although that might just be a new leaf that hasn't unfurled fully. That little one down there definitely looks like another flower spike, though. So, might be time to get in here and cut the anubias back. At the very least, I'm going to let that those flowers do their thing. They don't fully open the way they would if they were emergent, but they still do turn into something that looks pretty close to a flower underwater, which I just think is pretty neat. I'm not sure what we got going on. Okay, I know what's stuck in my surface skimmer there, so that's a plant I want to get out. It used to be buried over here. I'm not sure what the plant actually is, but it used to be over here, and it got dug up by the T-bar along with my Aponigeton, and you can kind of make out back there, if you can see that little speck of brown, that's the acorn-sized bulb, or I'm not sure if that's a tuber or a bulb. I think it's a bulb. And that's the Aponigeton. I just haven't gotten in there and put it back in the ground. I need to put it in the ground and then put a big rock sort of over the edge of it so it can grow kind of out and around the rock, as bulbs can easily do. But the T-bar will not be able to dig it up and scoop it up. So here's a little better look at this high-fin spotted pleco. It's a really good looking fish. But I'm telling you, this looks different than the one I've got in my native tank. I know it's not a native fish, but it is in my native tank. So let's focus on having a look at this one while he's going to sit out and display himself like that. And I am trying to see, without moving the camera, I'm trying to look over my shoulder. I can see that Chinese algae eater, but I do not see the fish that is supposed to be the same fish as this one. Oh, yes, I do. I see his head sticking out now. If he moves into a position where we can actually see him. See, this is why I think that T-bar is no longer living at this end of the tank. I think this pleco here is the reason that T-bar now lives at the other end of the tank. So here's the other one. Let's see. Oh man, this is really weird. Let's have a look at this tank real quick. There's the pleco, and it was just being harassed by, can you guess which fish? My stupid Chinese algae eater in there was trying to latch on to the pleco. Look, there he goes again. That Chinese algae eater is just such an awful fish. I bet they don't even taste good. The only thing I can see about them is that they really, really will keep your tank really clean. Like, they'll scrape stuff clean. You'll have teeth marks in the wood from that fish. But there are other fish that will do that too. You don't need to rely on that stupid Chinese algae eater. Look how awful that thing is. He won't even leave that pleco alone. At least if he's going to harass and attack a fish, I'd rather it be that pleco, because they're armored and they can deal with it. They're not too friendly themselves when they don't want to be. They can be really territorial and aggressive in their own right. So they can kind of deal with it. They're sort of built to deal with similar fish, you know, other plecos that might be territorial towards them. The fish I was worried about is this tilapia, which so far doesn't even really show signs of stress. Its color is always good. You know, I never really worry about that Chinese algae eater bothering it too much unless I actually see signs of that happening, and so far I haven't. But this is the second time now I've seen that Chinese algae eater going after that pleco, although I've never been lucky enough to get it on video before. So he's a terrible fish. I hate the thing. I did that video out there that fish I'd never buy again, and that's the number one fish that I'd never buy again. And of course I say never, but then my very first words out of my mouth was I can't say I'd never buy it again, and that's only because I don't like to speak in absolutes. Who knows what the future holds? But in the foreseeable future, and I can't imagine the circumstances, you know, if you throw in caveats like that, then no, I can't imagine what circumstances I would ever want to buy a Chinese algae eater again. Just an absolutely awful fish. Hate those things. So, on that distraction, that brings me back to the tank we're going to be working on here tonight. That was a nice little distraction. One of the things I enjoy about my fish rooms, there's always something to look at in here. So we've got the plants covered. We talked about them. We've talked about this fish a little bit. I got to get in there and kind of gravel vac up some of that poop, although we didn't really talk about it, but we did look at it. And my snail here, look how awful its shell looks. Now, I've put a variety of stuff in this tank to mineralize it. I've put stones that were called mineral stones that dissolved fairly rapidly. I've put wonder shells in this tank, although I do believe that the wonder shells need to be replaced after every water change. And I've put a little bit of poultry grit, which is crushed coral and oyster shells, in the filter. Now, I've done this in some of my other tanks, and all the issues I was having with the snails immediately went away when I started doing this in my other tanks. This tank, for example, has 3 mystery snails in it. I made the mistake of thinking that mystery snails needed brackish water to breed, and I was very wrong about that. So I will probably be getting in here and separating them out so I no longer have mommy snails and daddy snails in the same tank, because I now have a lot of baby snails in this tank. So if anybody's interested in blue mystery snails, I'll put my email down below. Check it out. Contact me. We can work something out. I'll sell them cheap. I'm going to have a lot of them to get rid of here in the near future. Either that or they're going to wind up going in my various fish tanks as best I can, but ultimately they're probably going to end up in tanks that either have loaches or puffers in them. So if you want blue mystery snails, let me know. At any rate, the mystery snails in that tank and the other tanks that I've got some snails in all seem to be doing really well. The snails in this tank do not. I've got that one, and I've got one of the blue mystery snails went in this tank, and then I had a white mystery snail. And the other day I saw the white mystery snail, or I guess it could have been the blue one, just looking really rough. And its shell, the color, instead of being like that creamy white, it was just a really white, like an eggshell white. And it looked like it had a big crack, but not like a crack like it was broken, like a crack like it wasn't developing properly. It just looked weird. I'm looking around. I don't see it in there anywhere now, so I'm not sure where it is. It might not even be in there anymore, honestly, but you'd think the shell at least would still be in there. Although I suppose it could be down on the bottom behind those rocks. There's plenty of places for a little snail shell to hide. At any rate, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure why the mineralization process in this tank doesn't seem to be working. But we're going to try again. I am going to do a water change on this tank tonight. And hopefully I can get down here and do a water change on a lot of these tanks. But tonight we're going to do a water change on this tank. This is not going to be a before and after or anything. I'm actually just kind of chatting about this. I just walked in the door, so I'm sort of kind of gearing myself up for what I want to do rather than what's actually happening at the moment. So hopefully within the next few minutes when I'm done this video, we're going to get started on a water change. And the next time we see this tank, it's going to at least be cleaned up a little bit. So there you go. There's your little sort of oddball update on a Monday night. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything. You never know what it's going to be with me. Don't forget this one here is my T-bar tank. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.